Lena had always been the type of girl who blended into the background without even trying. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, nor the one who tried to make everyone look at her. In fact, she often preferred quiet corners, soft routines, and the comfort of being unnoticed. She attended classes, completed her assignments, greeted people politely, and then quietly faded back into her own little world. Most people in her school knew her face but not her story. Some even forgot she existed until she happened to walk past them. But inside her, hidden behind her soft habits and small footsteps, lived a dream she rarely spoke about. She loved singing. She had loved it since she was tiny, back when she used to hum along with the old radio in her mother's kitchen. Her mother often smiled and said she carried tunes like they were meant to be hers. Lena remembered those moments clearly, even though people around her rarely noticed how deeply music touched her. The school's annual talent show was coming up, a big event that students talked about for weeks. It was loud, flashy, sometimes messy, but always full of excitement and energy. Every year, students with confidence and showmanship stepped forward to display whatever talent they had. Dancing, acting, comedy, singing, even magic tricks. Posters filled the hallways, announcing sign-up dates and reminding students not to miss the chance to shine. Lena never thought of joining. Just the idea of standing on a stage with hundreds of eyes staring at her made her stomach twist. She imagined her voice failing, her hands shaking, her words stumbling. She imagined people laughing, not because she was funny but because she looked like she didn't belong there. The fear always stopped her long before she could even think of signing up. But this year felt different. Not because she suddenly gained confidence, but because two friends from her class kept insisting she should participate. They had heard her humming one afternoon during group work and were surprised at how pleasant her voice was. They encouraged her gently, telling her she had something special, something worth sharing. Lena laughed it off at first, waving her hand as if the idea was too silly to take seriously. Still, their words stayed with her. That evening, when she reached home and walked into her small, cozy room, she stood by the window for a long time. The sun was setting outside, painting the sky with colors that never asked for attention but still managed to be beautiful. She wondered if she could be like that, soft, simple, yet able to touch someone's heart. She didn't make a decision that night, but she did something small. She picked up her phone, searched for a song she loved, and played it softly. She stood there in the quiet room and began to sing. Her voice trembled a little at first, but slowly it became steady, floating gently around her. When the last note faded, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: warmth, courage, a tiny spark inside her chest. The next day, during lunch break, she walked past the sign-up table where a few students were filling forms. She slowed down without meaning to. Her heart beat faster as she looked at the blank lines on the page. She could hear whispers behind her. Students chatting, laughing, talking about who would perform and who might win. She didn't think anyone was watching her, but she still felt shy standing near the table. The teacher supervising the event smiled kindly and asked if she needed help. That simple kindness made Lena nod. Before she could change her mind, she picked up a pen and wrote her name. She didn't look at the form too long, afraid she might erase it if she stared at it for more than a second. She walked away quickly afterward, wondering if she had just done something brave or foolish. When people in her class heard she signed up, some reacted with surprise. A few smiled and cheered for her, but others simply shrugged. And there were some, of course, who whispered things like, "Why would she join? Or does she even sing?" They didn't mean it as a direct insult, but the doubt in their voices hurt a little. Lena tried to ignore it, reminding herself that she didn't sign up for them. She did it for the part of her that wanted to finally stop hiding. That week, she practiced every night after finishing her homework. She didn't have any music training or fancy equipment. She simply searched for karaoke tracks online, played them through her old speaker, and sang quietly so the neighbors wouldn't hear. Some nights, she made mistakes and grew frustrated. Other nights, she surprised herself with clearer notes and stronger breaths. She practiced while standing, sitting, lying down, walking around, anything to get used to singing in different states so nerves wouldn't ruin her voice on stage. She recorded herself once, listening to it with a mix of fear and curiosity. She heard flaws, of course, but she also heard sincerity and emotion. That gave her enough encouragement to keep going. Her family noticed she spent more time in her room than usual, but they didn't question her. They respected her privacy and trusted that she would tell them if something was wrong. She thought about telling them about the talent show but wasn't sure what their reaction would be. Would they be proud? Would they worry she was taking on too much? Would they come to the show and make her more nervous? She decided to wait a little longer before saying anything. The closer the talent show came, the more nervous she felt during school days. Whenever she passed by the auditorium, she imagined standing there in front of rows and rows of people. Her palms would grow sweaty each time. She wasn't sure if her legs would even hold her steady when the moment came. But she kept practicing anyway, holding on to the hope that her voice might carry her through. One night, a few days before the event, she sat on her bed and stared at the ceiling, asking herself whether this was worth all the fear. She thought about quitting, telling the organizers she had changed her mind. But quitting made her chest feel heavy, almost painful. Singing made her feel alive, even if it scared her. She reached for her phone and played her favorite song again. This time, she closed her eyes and sang from her heart, not caring about mistakes. When she finished, she felt tears sting her eyes. Not sadness, but relief. She had found something inside herself, something she didn't want to lose. Slowly, the day of the talent show approached. Students around her were full of excitement, talking about what acts they looked forward to seeing. Lena tried to act normal, but her thoughts kept drifting back to her performance. She kept rehearsing in her head, imagining the lights, the microphone, the silent audience waiting for her voice. She didn't know how the night would go. She didn't know if she would shine or shake. She didn't know if people would clap or sit in silence. But she knew one thing clearly. She was going to walk onto that stage. For the first time in her life, she was going to let people hear the dream she had kept hidden for so long. And even if only one person in the audience felt something from her song, it would be worth every moment of fear leading up to it. The days leading up to the talent show passed slowly for Lena, each one carrying a mix of excitement and fear that she tried her best to hide. She still moved through school the same quiet way she always did, but inside, her thoughts were louder than they had ever been. Every morning when she woke up, the first thing that hit her was the reminder that the performance was getting closer. Every night when she tried to sleep, her mind replayed the moment she would step onto the stage. Even though she had signed up willingly, she couldn't help wondering if she had made a mistake. Lena wasn't the type who liked attention, and she certainly wasn't used to crowds watching her. She imagined standing under the bright lights, hearing the microphone amplify her breathing, seeing hundreds of faces staring up at her. The thought made her heart race in a way she didn't know how to calm. Still, she kept practicing. She would come home from school, drop her bag near her desk, and start warming up her voice. She didn't always feel confident, but she made herself sing through the nerves. Her fear didn't disappear, but singing helped her breathe a little easier, even on the days when doubt was strongest. She realized something important during those nights of practice. Fear doesn't always mean you should stop. Sometimes fear shows up because something truly matters to you. That thought kept her going. At school, people started talking more openly about the talent show. Some students joked about who might embarrass themselves, while others discussed who they believed would impress the audience. Lena overheard these conversations whether she wanted to or not. Her name was never mentioned in a hopeful tone. If anything, some students sounded confused about why she was even participating. "She's too quiet," someone had whispered in the hallway. Another replied, "Maybe she'll cancel last minute." Lena pretended she didn't hear them. She kept walking with her books close to her chest, her eyes on the floor. But the words stuck with her, making her feel small, making her question herself again. Her two friends, who were the very people who encouraged her to sign up, noticed she seemed tense. One of them asked her during lunch if she was okay. Lena simply nodded and said she was just tired. She didn't want to admit she felt overwhelmed. She didn't want to look weak or uncertain. During one lunch break, she found a quiet spot behind the library, a place she often went when she needed a moment to breathe. She sat there for a while, listening to the muted sounds of students chatting inside. She closed her eyes and tried picturing herself singing confidently, letting her voice fill the auditorium the way it filled her room at home. She imagined the music playing softly as she took her first breath, imagined the feeling of the microphone in her hand. She imagined singing exactly the way she practiced every night. For a brief moment, she believed she could do it. But a few seconds later, fear slipped in again, like a shadow crawling into the edges of her thoughts. What if she forgot the lyrics? What if her voice cracked? What if she froze? She opened her eyes quickly, letting out a slow breath. She knew she couldn't run from these thoughts. She had to face them, even if they made her uncomfortable. That evening, when she reached home, her mother peeked into her room and asked if everything was all right. Lena smiled softly and said she was fine, though her voice didn't sound fully convincing. Her mother didn't push her. She simply placed a warm cup of tea on her table and told her she could talk whenever she felt ready. Lena appreciated that. She didn't need pressure. She needed space. After drinking her tea, she turned on the soft glow of her bedside lamp and began practicing again. She sang the same parts repeatedly, working on her breathing, trying to keep her notes steady. Sometimes she felt frustrated when she didn't hit a note the way she wanted. Other times, she surprised herself with how clear she sounded. There were nights when she stared at her reflection in the mirror, trying to imagine how she would appear on stage. She practiced standing tall, even though she didn't always feel tall inside. She tried smiling, even when nerves tingled in her stomach. She whispered encouraging words to herself, something she never used to do before. "I can do this," she would say quietly. "I just need to try." As the talent show approached, the school atmosphere grew livelier. Posters were updated with the final list of performers, and students began guessing what kind of acts they would see. Some performers rehearsed in the hallways, using their lockers as imaginary crowds. Others practiced outside during lunch breaks, dancing or warming up their voices loudly. Lena didn't rehearse publicly. She preferred her quiet room, where no one judged her, no one compared her to others, and no one expected her to be perfect. In her room, she was free to make mistakes, but she knew she couldn't rely on her room forever. She needed at least one real test, something that made her feel the pressure of performing without the full audience yet. So one evening, she did something unusual for her. She stood in the living room when her family was home and said softly, "Can you listen to me sing something?" Her mother looked up in surprise, her eyes warm. Her sibling paused their show and nodded eagerly, saying they would love to hear her. Lena felt her hands tremble. She had sung alone so many times, but singing in front of people, even her own family, felt like a new world. Still, she pressed play on her speaker and waited for the music to begin. Her first note came out shaky, unsure, but she kept going. She breathed slowly, like she practiced. She focused on the lyrics, on the meaning of the song, on the emotion she wanted to share. As she continued, her voice grew stronger. When she reached the chorus, something inside her loosened, allowing her voice to sound fuller, clearer. When the song ended, she lowered her gaze, unsure of what to expect. But the room stayed quiet for a moment, and then her mother spoke softly. "Your voice is beautiful," her sibling added. "You sounded really good." Lena felt her cheeks warm. A small part of her wanted to cry, but she held back the tears. She thanked them and quickly went back to her room. But once she closed the door, she let herself smile. A real one, not the kind she forced to appear brave. Maybe she wasn't as hopeless as she thought. The next day at school, she felt a tiny bit lighter. Not fully confident, but not completely scared either. It was a strange blend of both, like walking on a path where every step felt uncertain but possible. However, she still faced challenges. During breaks, a few students asked her what song she was going to sing, but she didn't want to share. She knew some students would judge her choice or compare her to others. She simply told them she hadn't decided yet. Some students accepted that response. Others whispered, guessing she was unprepared. She tried to block out those voices, focusing only on what she could control: her practice, her breathing, her emotions. 2 days before the talent show, There was a rehearsal session in the auditorium. Performers were expected to attend, but it wasn't a full practice. They simply walked onto the stage, checked the microphone, adjusted the height, and tested the sound briefly. When Lena's turn came, her heart pounded so loudly she felt it echo through her entire body. The auditorium wasn't full, but a few students and teachers were still there, waiting for their turn or managing the session. She walked onto the stage slowly, her steps careful and unsure. The bright lights felt heavier than she expected. She blinked, trying to adjust to them. She held the microphone for the first time, feeling how cold and solid it was. "Whenever you're ready," the teacher said kindly. Lena nodded. She opened her mouth, intending to sing a short line, but her voice didn't come out at first. She swallowed, breathed, and tried again. This time, a soft note escaped her lips. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The teacher smiled and adjusted the sound, telling her she was good to go. As she stepped off the stage, she felt both shaky and relieved. She didn't sing her whole song, but she had faced the stage, and that counted for something. That night, she practiced longer than usual. She wanted her voice to feel strong when she stood under those lights again. She wanted her emotions to guide her, not her fear. The night before the talent show, she couldn't sleep. She kept sitting up, lying down, turning, and trying to calm her breathing. She kept imagining the moment she would walk onto the stage, how the room might react, how she hoped her voice wouldn't fail her. But she also imagined the possibility of surprising people, not to prove them wrong, but to prove to herself that she was more capable than she believed. By the time morning arrived, Lena knew she wasn't fully ready. But she also knew something even more important. She was going to try anyway. The day of the talent show arrived with a strange kind of silence that followed Lena everywhere she went. It wasn't that the world around her was quiet. Students were louder than ever, rushing around, laughing, testing microphones, rehearsing lines, adjusting outfits. The school buzzed with an energy that felt almost electric. But inside Lena, everything felt muted, as if her own thoughts had been wrapped in a thin layer of fog. She woke up early, long before her alarm rang, her heart beating fast as if it already knew what was waiting for her. She stared at the ceiling for a while, letting the weight of the day settle on her chest. Part of her wanted to stay in bed and pretend none of this was happening. But another part, small but brave, kept reminding her that she had worked too hard to run away now. She got ready slowly, choosing simple clothes that made her feel comfortable. She didn't need a fancy outfit. She just needed to feel like herself. She tied her hair back loosely, took a deep breath, and looked at her reflection. She didn't look like someone who was about to perform in front of a full auditorium, but she hoped she could become that person by the end of the day. Her family wished her luck before she left. They didn't make a big deal out of it, which she appreciated. She wasn't ready for grand speeches or emotional moments. She just needed quiet support, and they gave her exactly that. When she reached school, she noticed the halls were decorated with bright banners and colorful lights. The talent show was one of the biggest events of the year, and the school treated it that way. Students carried costumes, props, instruments, and bags filled with makeup and accessories. Some looked confident, practicing their moves in the hallways, while others looked nervous, speaking softly to themselves or pacing back and forth. Lena tried to blend in, walking to her class before heading to the auditorium for the final check-in. Her friends spotted her and rushed over, their faces filled with excitement. "Are you ready?" one of them asked, smiling brightly. Lena forced a small smile and shrugged. "I'm nervous," she admitted. "That's normal. Everybody is," her friend said gently. "You'll do great." She appreciated the encouragement, even if it didn't completely calm her nerves. They walked with her toward the auditorium, talking about random things to keep her distracted. The auditorium looked different from how it appeared during rehearsal. The lights were brighter, the stage decorations were in place, and the sound of students chattering filled the room. The noise echoed off the walls, bouncing around like excited energy. Lena felt her heart squeeze tightly as she looked around. Rows and rows of seats stretched out, waiting to be filled. The stage felt bigger, more intimidating now that everything was set up. Her breath caught in her throat. She found the backstage entrance and checked in with one of the teachers managing the performers. The teacher smiled warmly, telling her when her turn would be. It wasn't too early, but not too late either, somewhere in the middle, which made her feel slightly relieved. She didn't want to wait for hours, but she also didn't want to be the very first person. Backstage was a world of its own. Performers stretched, practiced lines, fixed clothing, tuned instruments, or whispered prayers to themselves. The air was thick with both excitement and tension. People spoke in hushed tones, as if afraid that raising their voices might make their nerves worse. Lena found a small corner where she could sit quietly. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. She could hear the muffled chatter of the audience outside growing louder as more students and teachers arrived. She imagined the seats filling up, imagined the lights dimming, imagined the host stepping onto the stage. Her stomach twisted again. She practiced the opening lines of her song under her breath, barely audible above the noise. She didn't want anyone to hear her yet. Not until it mattered. She clasped her hands together, trying to hide the fact that they were trembling. The show began with a loud cheer from the audience. The host's cheerful voice boomed through the speakers, introducing the event with jokes and energy. Lena felt the vibrations of the applause through the floor. She listened as the first performer went on stage, a group dance act. The audience clapped along to the song, cheering loudly when the dancers hit their final pose. As each performance went by, Lena felt herself getting more and more tense. She watched from behind the curtains as singers, dancers, and comedians took the stage. Some performers looked confident. Others looked just as nervous as she felt. But each one finished their act, smiling as the audience clapped for them. Lena wondered if she would be able to smile like that. A teacher backstage placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're up soon. Are you ready?" Lena swallowed and nodded, though she wasn't sure if ready was the right word. Maybe no one ever truly felt ready. Maybe being ready simply meant stepping forward anyway. Her legs felt weak as she stood. She wiped her palms on her skirt and took a slow, deep breath. Through the side gap in the curtain, she could see the audience. The auditorium was full, more full than she expected. Students filled almost every seat, some leaning forward eagerly. Teachers sat in the middle rows, smiling and talking quietly while waiting for the next act. The lights made everything look brighter, almost unreal. She blinked a few times, trying to calm herself. The host smiled at her as she stepped closer to the entrance of the stage. "You're going to be great. Just take your time," he whispered. She nodded again, though she wasn't sure if the words actually reached her through her nerves. When the performer before her finished, the audience clapped loudly. The host walked onto the stage again, announcing Lena's name and telling the audience she would be singing. The applause was polite, calm, low. Not the loudest, not the smallest, just enough to show they were listening. Lena felt her heart beating faster as she stepped onto the stage. The lights were so bright that she couldn't clearly see the audience anymore. All she saw were shapes, shadows, outlines of people. The microphone stood in front of her, waiting. She walked up to it slowly, her footsteps surprisingly louder than she expected. She could hear the sound of her own breathing in the speakers as she adjusted the microphone slightly. The music technician nodded from the side, ready to play her track. Lena gripped the microphone with both hands, hoping it would steady her. She could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. The music started soft, gentle, familiar. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. It felt like her throat tightened at the last second, trapping her voice inside. The audience grew quiet, waiting. Her cheeks warmed. Her fingers trembled. She wondered if everyone could see how scared she was. She closed her eyes for a moment, blocking out the lights, the crowd, the whispers she imagined they were already making. She took a slow breath. Then she tried again. This time her voice came out, soft at first, barely above a whisper, but real. It wavered slightly, but she pushed through it, letting the sound float into the room. She focused on the melody she had practiced so many times. She focused on the words she knew by heart. Halfway through the first line, something shifted inside her. The trembling in her hands eased. The fear in her chest loosened. Her voice grew stronger. The audience became still, listening closely. Lena felt her confidence returning in small waves. She let herself feel the music, let herself sink into it, let the stage become her space instead of something to fear. She wasn't perfect. She wasn't loud. But she was honest. She reached the end of the first verse, her voice clearer than she expected. And for the first time since she stepped on stage, she looked up. Through the lights, she saw the faint outlines of faces. Some surprised, some leaning forward, some frozen in place. She didn't know if they were impressed or simply shocked that the quiet girl they overlooked had a voice worth hearing. But in that moment, none of that mattered. She sang the next lines with more courage than she thought she had. She let her voice rise and soften in all the right places. She could feel the song carrying her, guiding her, reminding her why she loved singing. When she reached the high note, the one she practiced endlessly at home, she took a breath and let it out with her whole heart. The note rang out through the auditorium. The audience didn't move. Lena finished the phrase, letting the last vibration fade away. In that moment, the fear was completely gone. She was no longer just a quiet girl on a stage. She was someone who finally let her voice be heard. But that calm does not last long. The sky is still cloudy from the night before, and the air feels heavy, as if something big is about to happen. Everyone is tired, yet no one wants to slow down because they all know that slowing down usually means losing control of the situation. They have already come too far to let fear or confusion take over again. So each person keeps moving, even if their steps feel heavier than yesterday. The morning starts with quiet conversations, the kind where people are awake but not fully ready to deal with the day. Someone boils water for tea, someone else checks the tools they repaired the night before, and a few sit together trying to understand the new information they discovered. Every small action feels important now. Nobody wants to miss a detail, because every detail seems to connect to something bigger. Even though the group is still unsure about what waits ahead, there is a new kind of trust forming between them. They did not plan to rely on each other this much, but the challenges pushed them closer in ways they did not expect. They understand each other better now. They notice small things like who gets nervous before they speak, who hides their worry behind jokes, and who becomes quiet when something serious is on their mind. These things matter because they help the group stay balanced. As they pack their things and get ready to move again, one of them speaks up with a thought that has been building for a while. They say that maybe they should not only focus on surviving or reaching the next place. Maybe they should also try to understand why everything has been happening in this strange and unpredictable way. They suggest that the answers might be somewhere deeper, beyond the obvious. Everyone listens carefully. It is not easy to think about answers when troubles keep coming, but the thought makes sense. They cannot move forward blindly forever. The path today feels different. It is a mix of hope, worry, and curiosity. The group walks together, sometimes quietly, sometimes talking about the clues they have found. At one point, they stop near an old stone wall covered in marks. At first, the marks look random, but after a few minutes, someone notices a pattern. The pattern matches the symbols they found earlier, but in a different order. This discovery creates a small spark of excitement in the group. Finally, something that feels like progress. They take pictures, make notes, and try to understand the meaning. One person thinks the symbols might be directions. Another thinks they are warnings. Another feels the symbols represent time rather than location. None of them are completely sure, but the energy among them rises as they continue to talk. It feels good to discuss something other than danger and uncertainty. It feels good to think again, not just react. As they continue walking, the air shifts. It becomes warmer and the wind stops. The surroundings grow quieter than before. Even the birds seem to disappear. The silence makes the group slow down. They look around carefully, staying close to each other. Something about the atmosphere feels strange. Not dangerous, but different. Like they have stepped into a place that watches them, not in a threatening way but in a curious one. They reach an open area with tall grass that moves slowly, as if it has its own heartbeat. In the middle of the field stands something unusual, something they did not expect to see. It looks like a wooden frame, shaped like an arch, but covered in vines and old metal pieces. It seems handmade yet too precise to be random. The group approaches slowly, unsure if they should touch it or simply observe it from a distance. After a long moment of silence, someone gently places a hand on the frame. Nothing happens at first, but then a light vibration moves through the wood. It is mild, almost unnoticeable, but enough to make everyone hold their breath. The person steps back quickly, unsure what they just triggered. Yet nothing dangerous happens. The frame remains still. They examine it more closely. At the base of the frame are symbols, the same type of symbols they saw earlier, but these ones appear clearer and more carefully carved. One of the group members kneels to trace them with their fingers, and something clicks in their mind. They finally understand that the symbols are not just directions or warnings. They are a guide, a map that leads to something they have been trying to understand since the beginning. The realization brings both excitement and responsibility. If these symbols are truly guiding them, it means they are getting closer to the real purpose behind everything that has been happening. The path ahead might be harder, but at least they are moving with intention now, not confusion. They decide to set up a short rest near the arch-shaped structure so they can think without rushing. Everyone sits down, some leaning against their backpacks, others lying on the grass while staring at the sky. The mood becomes thoughtful, almost peaceful, even though they all know that another twist might come at any moment. Yet for now, they allow themselves to breathe. During this quiet period, a conversation starts about fear. One person admits that they have been scared the entire time, even when they pretended not to be. Another says they were scared too, but fear made them feel more alive, as if every step mattered. Someone adds that fear is not always the enemy. Sometimes it keeps people alert and aware. The discussion becomes deeper than they expected. It reminds all of them that fear is not a weakness. It is a sign that they care about surviving and understanding. After a while, they stand up again and test the arch more carefully. They take measurements, check the direction it faces, and compare it to the notes they have collected. The more they observe, the more everything starts connecting. The arch seems to be placed exactly where it needs to be. Not randomly, not by accident, but purposely aligned with the path they have been following. When they decide it is time to continue, the group grows quieter again. The forest ahead looks darker, yet not threatening. It is the kind of darkness that hides secrets rather than danger. They move forward slowly, watching their surroundings, listening to every sound, and staying close enough to reach one another if needed. Inside the forest, they notice something interesting. The ground shows signs of someone passing through recently. Footprints, broken branches, and pieces of cloth stuck on bushes. This discovery raises a lot of questions. Who was here before them? Were they following the same symbols? Did they reach the arch too? Did they understand something the group has not yet figured out? These questions push the group forward with new motivation. They follow the trail carefully, moving quietly but quickly. The footprints lead deeper into the forest, then toward a narrow path lined with stones. At the end of the path, they find a small clearing with a wooden box lying beside a tree. The box is old but locked firmly, and there is a strange charm tied around it. It looks important, but none of them want to open it without thinking carefully first. They debate for a while, considering what could be inside. Maybe it holds answers. Maybe it holds clues. Maybe it holds something dangerous. Eventually, they agree that they must open it, but only after making sure it is safe. After checking for traps and examining the charm, they carefully remove the lock and lift the lid. Inside the box lies a folded piece of cloth with a symbol in the center. This symbol matches the carvings on the arch. Along with the cloth is a small note, written in simple handwriting. The note explains that whoever finds this box is close to discovering the truth. It warns them that understanding the truth is more important than reaching the end quickly. It also says they are not alone in their search. Others have walked the same path, some successful, some not. The note changes the mood completely. The idea that others have been here gives the group a sense of connection, but also a reminder that the journey is bigger than just them. They do not know who wrote the note, but they feel grateful for it. The cloth with the symbol becomes their new guide. With this discovery, they continue walking, feeling more confident but also more aware of the responsibility ahead. The forest opens up again, revealing a new landscape filled with tall trees and distant mountains. The sky becomes brighter as the clouds move aside, letting sunlight pour through the leaves. As part 4 ends, the group steps toward this new landscape with a mix of hope, fear, and determination. They finally understand that every clue, every symbol, every strange event has been leading them toward something meaningful. They do not know exactly what awaits, but they know one thing for sure: they are ready for whatever the next part brings. Begins right where the group left off, standing in a quiet clearing with the wooden box open in front of them. The cloth with the symbol rests gently on the grass, and the note they found still feels fresh in their minds. The idea that others have walked the same path makes everything feel heavier, yet strangely comforting too. It means they are not wandering without purpose. Someone before them believed this journey mattered. The group spends a few minutes absorbing what they read. The forest around them is still, almost as if it is giving them space to think. One person folds the cloth carefully, while another holds the note as if the handwriting itself might reveal something more. They talk softly about who might have left the box. Was it someone in trouble? Someone trying to help? Someone who learned something frightening and tried to warn the next travelers? None of them know, but they all agree the message is sincere. Before leaving the clearing, they make sure to take pictures of everything: the box, the charm, the cloth, and the note. They want to remember every detail because they have learned that even the smallest thing can become important later. When they finally start walking again, the energy among them feels different. It is calmer but more focused, like they understand the path in a deeper way now. The forest becomes denser as they move forward. The branches above create a kind of ceiling, letting sunlight fall in thin, broken lines across the ground. Every few minutes, they see something that reminds them of the ones who came before. Scratches on the bark of a tree, a stone placed in an unusual position, or a section of the ground cleared as if someone camped there. Instead of fear, these signs give them strength. They are not lost. They are following a trail, even if the trail was never meant to be obvious. As they continue, one person notices a strange humming sound. It is faint, almost like wind passing through metal pipes, but the air around them is still. They all stop and listen. The sound comes and goes, rising and falling as if responding to their movements. At first, they think it might be an animal or something natural, but the rhythm feels too steady, too intentional. They decide to follow the sound even though they have no idea where it will lead. The humming guides them to a narrow path hidden behind a cluster of thick bushes. The path is so well concealed that they never would have found it on their own. They push through the branches carefully and enter a small passageway surrounded by tall plants. The air changes immediately, feels cooler, more controlled, almost like the place has been shaped by someone rather than nature. After walking a few minutes through the narrow path, they reach an open space unlike anything they have seen before. In the center stands a tall stone pillar covered in the same symbols they found earlier. This time, however, the symbols glow faintly. Not a bright or unnatural glow, more like soft reflections, the way moonlight touches water. The humming sound is coming from the pillar. The group freezes for a moment, unsure how to react. The pillar does not look threatening, but it also does not look like something that belongs in a normal forest. One person steps closer while the others watch carefully. The closer they get, the more the humming changes. It becomes gentler, like it recognizes their presence. The person lifts a hand but stops just before touching the stone. They have learned to be careful with anything that seems out of place. The group circles the pillar, examining the carvings. They notice that some symbols match the ones on the cloth, while others seem new. One person points out that the pillar might be a key point, a location where information converges. Maybe it is part of the guide. Maybe the arch they saw earlier and the pillar now are connected, forming a path meant to be followed in order. When they finally decide to make contact, they do it slowly. One person places their hand on the stone. The humming stops instantly. The silence that follows is so sudden that everyone holds their breath. A second later, the humming returns, softer than before but pulsing in a steadier rhythm. The pillar feels warm, almost as if it is alive. Something begins to shift. The symbols rearrange subtly, not like physical movement, but like a change in the way the light reflects on them. Patterns appear, guiding lines form, and lines connect to each other. The group realizes the pillar is showing them a direction. It is pointing toward something deeper in the forest, somewhere they have not yet explored. They take a moment to rest near the pillar. The ground around it feels comfortable, almost welcoming. They sit down and share water and snacks, talking quietly about what they think the pillar means. One person believes it might lead to a place where the truth is clearer. Another thinks it could lead to danger. Someone else says that everything they have found so far has balance between both, answers and risks, clues and confusion. They know they cannot stop now. After gathering their strength, they continue into the forest following the direction suggested by the pillar. The path ahead becomes steeper, climbing upward toward rocky terrain. The trees thin out as they move higher, and the sky becomes more visible. The air grows colder, but it feels clean and refreshing. They use sticks to steady their steps on the uneven ground. Halfway up the slope, they notice something unusual on the ground, another cloth symbol similar to the one from the box. This one is pinned under a stone to prevent it from blowing away. The cloth looks newer, not dusty or worn. This discovery surprises everyone. If the cloth is new, it means someone else passed through recently, maybe even today. The group looks at one another, unsure how to feel. Should they be concerned? Curious? Cautious? They examine the cloth and notice a small drawing on the corner. It shows a simple mountain shape with an arrow pointing upward. The drawing seems rushed, as if the person who left it did not have much time. The group interprets it as a sign that they are going in the right direction. Maybe the person ahead of them wanted to leave a clue, or maybe they wanted to warn others. Either way, the group continues climbing. The higher they go, the more the landscape changes. The trees spread out, the rocks grow larger, and the wind starts to whistle through cracks and openings in the stone. They reach a flat area near the edge of a cliff where they can see the valley below. The view stretches far, showing forests, rivers, and the long path they have already traveled. For a moment, they simply stand there in silence, taking in the beauty of the world around them. Despite the uncertainty of the journey, moments like this remind them why moving forward matters. The world is bigger than their fear. They continue climbing until they reach a point where the path splits in two, one trail leading into a dark opening between rocks, the other curving around the mountain toward a brighter area. The group debates which way to go. The symbols on the cloth do not indicate left or right. The pillar did not give a specific direction beyond forward. They look closely at the ground and notice small footprints leading toward the darker path. They match the size and shape of the earlier footprints they saw in the forest. This settles their decision. They choose the darker path. It feels risky, but it also feels like the correct continuation of the journey. The entrance looks narrow, but once inside, the space opens into a wide stone corridor with walls covered in faded markings. The air is cooler than outside, but not uncomfortably cold. The corridor twists and turns, leading them deeper into the mountain. As they move inside, they hear faint echoes of water dripping somewhere far away. The sound repeats in steady intervals, creating a rhythm that helps calm their nerves. They use small lights to see clearly, but the walls reflect just enough natural glow that they never feel lost in darkness. After walking for several minutes, they reach a chamber that takes their breath away. The room is round and tall, with a ceiling that rises like a dome. In the center is another structure, this one shaped like a circle laid flat on the ground, made of stone pieces arranged perfectly. The circle is carved with symbols similar to the earlier ones, but in a far more detailed pattern. The entire chamber feels charged with meaning. The group spreads out, exploring the room. One person touches the edge of the stone circle and feels a soft vibration, similar to the arch and the pillar but gentler. Someone else scans the walls and finds drawings showing paths, landscapes, and movements of stars. Another finds a small stone stand holding a thin piece of metal shaped like a blade but not sharp. It looks ceremonial, as if used in rituals rather than combat. The group realizes this place is not random. It is significant. It is part of the purpose behind the symbols, the clues, the journey. The silence in the chamber feels thoughtful rather than empty. They sit down in the center, taking time to understand the space before making any decisions. The stone under them feels warm, not cold like normal rock. One person suggests that the stone circle might activate something when touched correctly. Another suggests it might be a map. Someone else believes it might require the cloth with the symbol. They take the cloth out and place it gently on the stone. The markings on the cloth align perfectly with some of the carvings on the circle, as if they were designed together. A soft glow forms around the cloth, and the vibration becomes steady. The entire room seems to respond. The group stands back, watching carefully as the lines on the circle begin to illuminate, one by one, connecting to create a full pattern. They do not know what is happening, but it feels like the next step, another part of the truth revealing itself. As part 5 closes, the group stands in the glowing chamber, realizing they have unlocked something important. The journey is far from over, but they are no longer just searching blindly. They are finally beginning to understand the path they were meant to follow.